I never expected my birthday would be the day my life imploded. The letter arrived just after lunch, mixed in with the usual stack of cards and well wishes. No return address, just my name written in an unfamiliar hand. My name is Cassidy, but everyone calls me Cass. At 34, I run a successful tech startup and live what most would consider a charmed life. Well, except for the chronic illness that keeps me tethered to weekly clinic visits, but I've learned to work around that. I was sitting at my desk when I opened it. The paper inside was a bank statement, not mine, but my husband Ryder's. Red numbers jumped out at me, along with transaction after transaction from various casinos. The total made my stomach drop, $487,000 in gambling debts. Mrs. Hawthorne? My assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. Your husband is here with lunch. I quickly stuffed the statement back in its envelope, my hands shaking. Send him in. Ryder walked in with that easy smile that made me fall for him 3 years ago. He held up a bag from my favorite sushi place. Happy birthday, beautiful. Thanks, I managed, watching him unpack the containers. How many times had he sat across from me, acting like everything was fine while drowning in debt? You okay? He paused, chopsticks halfway to his mouth. You look pale. Did something happen at the clinic? I touched the envelope under my desk calendar. Actually, I got an interesting piece of mail today. His smile didn't waver, but something flickered in his eyes. Oh! Nearly $500,000, Ryder? In gambling debts? The chopsticks clattered to the desk. His face went through a series of expressions, shock, guilt, fear, before settling on something that looked like resignation. Who told you? He asked quietly. Does it matter? Were you ever going to tell me? He reached across the desk for my hand. I pulled back. Cass, I can explain. I've been trying to fix it. Fix it? I laughed, but it came out more like a sob. By gambling more? No, I'm getting help. I didn't want to worry you with your health and everything. Don't. I held up my hand. Don't use my illness as an excuse. My phone buzzed, a text from his sister Marin. Happy birthday. Dinner at our place tonight? I stared at the message, wondering if she knew. If everyone knew except me. We need to talk about this, Ryder said. But not here. Let's go home. I have meetings all afternoon. It was a lie, but I needed time to think. We'll talk tonight. He nodded, gathering the barely touched lunch. At the door, he paused. I love you, Cass. That's never been a lie. After he left, I pulled out the statement again, studying the dates. The most recent transaction was from 3 days ago. Whatever help he claimed to be getting, it clearly wasn't working. My birthday card sat unopened on the corner of my desk, suddenly seeming like artifacts from a different life, one where I thought I knew who I was married to. I didn't make it to Marin's for birthday dinner. Instead, I spent the evening in my home office, going through every bank statement and credit card bill I could find. The more I dug, the worse it got. Ryder had been careful to keep his gambling separate from our joint accounts, but the paper trail was there if you knew where to look. You can't hide in here forever, Ryder called through the door around midnight. Please, let's talk about this. I opened the door to find him looking disheveled, his usually perfect hair a mess from running his hands through it. I think we're past talking. Cass, please, his phone buzzed. Marin's name lit up the screen. Your sister's been calling all night, I said. Does she know? He hesitated just a second too long. She's just worried about you. Don't lie to me. Not again. I grabbed his phone and answered before he could stop me. Marin? Cassidy. Finally. We've been so worried. Her voice dripped with concern that felt rehearsed. Dean and I are coming over. Family needs to stick together in times like these. Times like what, exactly? I watched Ryder's face pale. How long have you known about your brother's gambling? Silence crackled over the line. Then, he needs support right now, not judgment. We're 15 minutes away. She hung up before I could protest. Ryder reached for my hand, but I stepped back. You told your sister before you told me? She figured it out, he said. I needed someone to talk to, and you were so busy with the company. Don't you dare make this my fault. My voice shook. How much does she know? How much have you told her about our finances? The doorbell rang before he could answer. Marin burst in without waiting, Dean trailing behind her. She wrapped me in a perfume-heavy hug that felt more like a restraint. "Oh, honey," she cooed. "You must be devastated. But we'll help you through this. Won't we, Dean?" Dean nodded, already making himself comfortable on our couch. "Family first, right?" "This isn't a family meeting," I said. "This is between me and my husband." "Don't be silly," Marin said, settling in like she owned the place. "Ryder needs our support. And you need guidance on how to handle this." Delicately. Something in her tone made my skin crawl. I caught Dean eyeing the artwork on our walls, pieces I'd collected, paid for with my company's success. "What Ryder needs is professional help," I said. "Not enablers." "Enablers?" Marin's smile turned sharp. "We're trying to save your marriage. Unless you're not considering divorce." The way she said it, like a threat rather than a question, made everything click. This wasn't about supporting Ryder. This was about protecting their meal ticket me. I looked at my husband, searching for any sign that he saw through his sister's act. But he just stood there, caught between us, looking more lost than ever. "I think you should all leave," I said quietly. "Now." I came home early from my clinic appointment to find a stranger in my kitchen. She was humming while loading the dishwasher, so absorbed in her task she didn't hear me enter. "Excuse me?" My voice made her jump. "Who are you?" "Oh, Mrs. Hawthorne." She wiped her hands nervously on her apron. "I'm Lila. Mr. Calloway hired me last month to help with the housework." "Last month?" I steadied myself against the counter, another wave of betrayal washing over me. "I wasn't aware we had a housekeeper. Is everything okay?" Ryder appeared in the doorway, his face falling when he saw us. "Cass, you're home early." Clearly. I turned to Lila. "Would you give us a moment?" She practically fled the kitchen. I waited until I heard the front door close before facing my husband. "When were you going to tell me about her?" "I wanted to surprise you," he said quickly. "You're always so tired from work and the treatments." I thought having help would. Would what? Make up for gambling away $500,000. I opened the cabinet where we kept our financial records. "How are you paying her, Ryder?" "Because I just spent 2 hours with our accountant, and there's a lot of money missing that can't be explained by casino debts alone." He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Marin's been helping with some expenses." "Marin?" I laughed bitterly. "Your sister who's been behind on her mortgage 3 times this year? She and Dean came into some money." "Stop lying." My hand slammed against the counter, making us both jump. "Just stop." I talked to Dean's ex-wife yesterday. She told me about the investment scam they ran in Florida. "Is that what this is? Another scam?" The color drained from his face. "It's not what you think." My phone buzzed, a text from Theo, my nurse. "Missing you at the clinic today. Everything okay?" I'd been so angry I'd walked out halfway through my treatment. Not my smartest move, but I couldn't sit there any longer once Dean's ex finished telling me about the Calloway's history of financial fraud. "I'm calling my lawyer," I said, already dialing. "We need a postnuptial agreement. Today. Cass, please." Ryder reached for me, but I stepped back. "We can work this out. I'll tell Marin to back off. I'll get help." "You've been saying that for weeks." I held up my hand as he tried to interrupt. "The agreement is non-negotiable. Either you sign it or I file for divorce." His phone chimed, Marin again, always hovering. He glanced at it, then back at me, torn between family loyalty and marriage. "Okay," he finally said. "I'll sign whatever you want. Just don't give up on us yet." I watched him walk away, shoulders slumped in defeat. Through the window, I saw Lila getting into a car where Marin sat waiting in the driver's seat. They talked briefly before driving off together. Something told me this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The postnuptial agreement sat on my desk for 3 days before Theo noticed something was wrong during my treatment. "Your blood pressure's through the roof," he said, adjusting my four. "Want to talk about it?" I watched the medication drip, wondering how much to share. Have you ever trusted someone completely, only to realize you never really knew them at all? Before he could answer, Marin swept into the treatment room like she owned it. "There you are. We've been worried sick. How did you know I was here?" I asked, though I already knew. Ryder must have told her. Family looks out for each other, she said, settling into the visitor's chair uninvited. Speaking of which, Dean's been going over that agreement your lawyer sent. There are some concerning clauses we should discuss. Theo busied himself checking my vitals, but I could see him listening. I kept my voice steady. The agreement is between Ryder and me. Don't be naive, Cassidy. Your health makes you vulnerable. You need family to protect your interests. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. What happens to the company if you can't run it anymore? Have you thought about that? My hand tightened around the armrest. My health is none of your business. But it is Ryder's business. As your husband, he has rights. I think you should leave, Theo interrupted, his professional demeanor cracking slightly. This is a treatment room, not a legal office. Marin's smile turned cold. Of course. We'll finish this discussion later. At the door, she paused. Oh, and Cassidy? Ryder won't be signing that agreement. We've found a better solution. After she left, Theo checked my blood pressure again. Want me to call security if she comes back? No, I said, pulling out my phone. But I need a favor. Can you get me the number for Dr. Chin? My medical records need to be locked down. Now. He wrote it down without question, then hesitated. Listen, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but earlier today, I overheard Lila talking to one of the nurses. She was asking very specific questions about your treatment schedule and prognosis. My stomach dropped. The housekeeper? She said she was asking for Ryder, but he trailed off, letting me connect the dots. I opened my laptop, pulling up the security footage from my home office. There she was, Lila, going through my desk while I was at the clinic. Taking photos of documents. Making calls. The pieces clicked into place. Marin hadn't just found out about Ryder's gambling, she'd orchestrated this whole thing. The housekeeper, the sudden concern about my health, the push against the postnuptial agreement. They weren't trying to save my marriage. They were trying to take everything I'd built. I closed my laptop, a cold clarity washing over me. Theo, I need one more favor. Can you help me move some things from my house? Tonight, while Ryder's at his therapy session. Of course, he said, understanding in his eyes. Whatever you need. It was time to stop playing defense. I was reviewing security footage of Lila in my office when Ryder came home early from his therapy session. He carried a small gift bag and wore that hopeful smile I'd once found charming. Can we talk? He asked, hovering in the doorway. I closed my laptop, hiding the evidence I'd been gathering. About what? He sat across from me, placing the bag between us. I've been thinking about our future, about what would make us stronger. Inside the bag was a tiny onesie with Future CEO printed across the front. My blood ran cold. A baby? I could barely get the words out. After everything that's happened, it would give us something to focus on besides all this negativity. He reached for my hand. The doctors said with proper monitoring. The doctors said a pregnancy could kill me. I pushed away from the desk, needing distance. Who put you up to this? Marin? His silence was answer enough. She thinks a baby would tie me to this family permanently, I said. Give you more legal rights to my company if something happened to me. That's not, he stopped, caught in the lie. Okay, yes, Marin suggested it. But I want this too. We talked about having kids before. Before I got sick. Before you gambled away our savings. Before your sister started plotting to take everything I've built. My phone buzzed, Theo texting to confirm he'd moved the last of my important documents to the safe deposit box. I saw Lila at the clinic today, I said, watching Ryder's reaction. Interesting coincidence. He paled slightly. She was probably just gathering information about my condition, taking photos of my medical records. I pulled up the security footage on my laptop, turning it to face him. Like she's been doing in my office? Cass, please. I trusted you. My voice cracked. I loved you. And you let your sister use our marriage as part of some con. He stood up, desperate now. It's not like that. I just needed help, and Marin said she could fix everything if. If what? If I conveniently became too sick to run my company? If we had a baby to ensure your claim to my assets? The onesie lay between us like evidence at a crime scene. Ryder reached for me again, but I backed away. Don't. I grabbed my keys and phone. I'm staying at a hotel tonight. Don't try to follow me, and don't let your sister into my house again. Where are you going? His voice had an edge I'd never heard before. To finish what you started, I said, already dialing my lawyer. I'm filing for divorce. And Ryder? Tell Marin she's not as clever as she thinks she is. I have proof of everything. 3 days at the hotel gave me time to plan my next moves. I should have known they'd use that time too. When I pulled into my driveway, Dean's truck was parked in my spot, loaded with furniture I didn't recognize. Inside, Marin was directing movers like a general commanding troops. My living room had been transformed, their cheap furniture replacing my carefully chosen pieces. What is this? I demanded. Oh, good timing. Marin's smile was razor-sharp. We're just getting settled in. Settled in. My voice sounded distant, unreal. Since you abandoned the marital home, Dean said, emerging from my kitchen with a beer, my beer, in hand, Ryder needed family support. We're moving in to help him through this difficult time. This is my house. I pulled out my phone to call the police, but Marin held up a document. Actually, it's half Ryder's. And these, she produced another stack of papers, are divorce proceedings, citing emotional abuse and abandonment. The room spun slightly. Emotional abuse? Threatening him over his addiction, using his illness against him. Withholding affection as punishment. She ticked off points on her manicured fingers. The courts don't look kindly on that, especially when the victim has documented mental health issues. Documented by whom? His therapist. Dean smirked. The one Marin recommended. My phone buzzed, Theo texting that something was wrong at the clinic. My medical records had been accessed despite the lockdown. Where's Ryder? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Meeting with our lawyers. Marin settled onto my couch, now her couch, apparently. We have quite a strong case for him taking control of your assets, given your deteriorating condition. The room tilted again. They had my medical records. They had a therapist's testimony. They had possession of my house. And somewhere in the background, Ryder was letting it all happen. You can't just. We can and we are. Dean stepped closer, his bulk suddenly threatening. You should leave now. Unless you want us to call the police about you harassing your soon-to-be ex-husband. My legs carried me outside somehow. Through the window, I watched Marin directing movers to hang their family photos over spots where mine had been. My phone buzzed again. Theo, don't go home. They filed a restraining order. Come to the clinic. Now. I sat in my car, watching strangers carry my life out piece by piece, replacing it with their cheap imitation. 3 years of marriage, reduced to a con game I never saw coming. The worst part? For a moment, I actually wondered if Ryder had been right about the baby. If I'd pushed him to this by being too focused on my company, too protective of my independence. Then I started the car. They wanted to play dirty? Fine. Time to show them who they were really dealing with. Theo was waiting outside the clinic with Lila when I arrived. Her hands twisted nervously in her apron, the same one she'd worn while spying on me. Tell her what you told me, Theo said gently. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Hawthorne. Lila's voice shook. I didn't know what they were planning at first. I just needed the money, and Mr. Calloway offered double if I'd report back to his sister. Report what exactly? Everything. Your schedule, your medications, your business calls. But last week. She glanced at Theo. Last week I overheard Miss Marin and her husband talking. They needed proof you were too sick to run your company. They said Mr. Ryder just needed to play his part a little longer. My phone buzzed, Ryder calling. I answered on speaker. Where are you? His voice was strange, desperate. Marin said you came to the house. Your sister's quite the actress, I said. Tell me, was the gambling addiction real, or just part of the con? Silence stretched between us. Then, I never meant for it to go this far. Marin said she could help with my debts if you just helped them take everything from me? You don't understand. They have evidence that could destroy me. The therapist, the gambling debts. Marin orchestrated all of it. A car pulled up, Dean's truck. He stepped out, looking unsurprised to find me here. "Ryder," I said quietly, "your sister's puppet just arrived. Want to hear what happens next?" "Cass, don't." I hung up. Dean approached, that smug smile still in place. "Ready to discuss terms?" "Actually, yes." I nodded to Theo, who pressed play on his phone. Lila's voice filled the air. Miss Marin said once they have proof of Mrs. Hawthorne's condition, they can force her out of the company. Mr. Ryder just needs to sign the papers saying she's unfit. Dean's smile vanished. "That proves nothing." "No." I pulled out my phone. "But the forged medical records might. Or the fake therapist's credentials. My security team's been quite thorough." "You're bluffing." "Am I?" I stepped closer. "Tell Marin she has 1 hour to clear out of my house. After that, the police get everything, including evidence of your Florida investment scam." His face contorted. "You little." "Careful," Theo warned, stepping between us. "Security cameras everywhere. Wouldn't want to add assault to those fraud charges." Dean backed away, fumbling for his phone. Through the window, I could see him gesturing angrily as he called Marin. "What about Mr. Calloway?" Lila asked quietly. I watched Dean's truck peel out of the parking lot. Ryder made his choice. Now he can live with it. My phone buzzed again. A text from my lawyer. "Documents ready." "Want me to file?" "Yes," I replied, then turned to Theo. "Thank you for everything." He smiled, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something besides anger. Something like hope. 6 months later, I stood in my newly renovated office, watching the sun rise over the city. The divorce was final, Marin and Dean had fled to avoid fraud charges, and my company had just launched its most successful product yet. My phone buzzed, a news alert about Ryder. He'd checked himself into rehab, finally getting real help for his gambling addiction. Part of me hoped he'd find peace there, far from his sister's influence. The rest of me was just glad to feel nothing but calm when I saw his name. A knock at my door pulled me from my thoughts. Theo entered with 2 coffee cups, a familiar routine we'd developed over these months. "Ready for your treatment later?" he asked, setting my cup down. "Actually, I have news about that." I handed him my latest test results. "The new medication is working. Dr. Chin says I might only need monthly treatments now." His smile lit up his whole face. "Cass, that's amazing. I have you to thank, for being there when everything fell apart." Speaking of that, he shifted, suddenly nervous. "There's something I've been wanting to tell you." "I know," I said softly. He blinked. "You do." Lila told me. "About how you turned down Marin's bribe to falsify my medical records. About how you've been protecting me since before all this started. I couldn't let them hurt you." His voice was quiet, sincere in a way Ryder's never had been. "But I never wanted to complicate things while you were going through the divorce." My office phone interrupted us, the front desk announcing Lila's arrival for our weekly meeting. I'd hired her properly this time, as head of office operations. People can surprise you, I'd learned, in both good ways and bad. "Have dinner with me tonight," I said to Theo. "Not as my nurse or my friend. Just dinner." His smile returned, brighter than before. "I'd like that." After he left, I opened my desk drawer and took out the baby onesie Ryder had given me, the last manipulation I'd almost fallen for. I'd kept it as a reminder, but now. I dropped it in the donation box by my door. Some lessons you need to remember, others you need to let go. My phone buzzed one last time, a text from my lawyer, final paperwork signed. It's really over. I looked out at my city, at my life rebuilt on my own terms. The sun had fully risen now, painting everything in new light. "No," I texted back. "It's just beginning." Through my office window, I watched Theo walking to his car, and for the first time in years, I felt truly, completely healthy in every way that mattered.